I'm Amy and welcome back, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different than what I've ever done before. It's not new on the channel, but it's not new on YouTube, it's new to me. It is what I watched during the month of whatever, and today it's going to be January. Obviously, I'm going to try to do these the first Tuesday of every month. We'll see how this one goes, if I enjoy it. Let's get started. If you want to follow along, you can go to my Letterboxd. It's linked into this in the description, but it's the same handle. You can search me on there like you would on most any other social media platform. And this is what my Letterboxd looks like. And let's just go to the diary page and scroll to the bottom of January. There we are. So the first thing that I watched was Doctor Who New Year's special. I'm not, super fond of this new Doctor, and more so the showrunners and writers for this new Doctor. I love having a female Doctor finally, and I love Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. I like the companions for the most part, but I don't know. There's just something about the stories that they're writing now without Stephen Moffat that just don't sit with me very well. I don't know. It's not like they don't sit with me. It's just, I don't enjoy them as much as I have the old Doctor Who that I grew up with, that I've been watching for the past like 8 years. And that'll be something I talk about, I guess, when I get to my list of TV, because I watched a lot of Doctor Who this month as well, because I love Doctor Who. It's one of my favorite shows, and it's on HBO Max, so I'll just like throw on a couple episodes. And then after watching the Doctor Who special, the Star Wars Holiday special was recommended in my YouTube recommendation, so I watched that. It's exactly what you think. I did write a little review for it, and if you want to read that review or the reviews for any of these other movies that I'm going to be talking about, there's a lot. I think I watched like 30 something movies this month already. And yeah, if you want to read my review for that or any of the other movies, go to my Letterboxd. I will write sometimes just like short little sentences or things that I find funny. They're usually very stupid. And then after that, I watched Osmosis Jones because it felt like the perfect time to resurrect that movie in the middle of a pandemic when it's about spreading a deadly disease. And then I watched Invisible Man finally, and I absolutely loved it. Elizabeth Moss is so great in it, and I'm really sad that I did not watch it earlier. And I watched The Mystery of D.B. Cooper, which is interesting. I love true crime, and that is one of the biggest unsolved mysteries of the US. And then I went on a little bit of a true crime binge the next day for true crime and culty kind of things. More culty, I guess, because Heaven's Gate, which is I don't know. I think they're called the Heaven's Gate, but it's a very weird cult, and it was really interesting to learn about them. And then Waco, which is the Davidians, the Branch Davidians, and that is really great. While watching this series, I spent the entire afternoon binging it. I had the feeling that I had watched it before, which I think I had when it first came on Netflix a couple years ago, but it is really, really great. I absolutely loved it. It was so, it rips you. Finally, to round out the 3rd of January, I watched Mayhem, which is a movie on Shudder, not sponsored, starring Steven Yeun. I think that's how you say his last name, and Samara Weaving. I really had a lot of fun with this film. It is so much fun. The cast is incredible. It's very funny. If you like horror movies that are funny, this is the one for you, because I did not really start getting into horror until recently, and a lot of the horror movies that I really have been enjoying are the more funnier, like comedy horror movies, and Mayhem is perfect for that. If you are trying to get into horror, it is very gory, so if you're not into gore, probably not that. If you're not into language, probably not that, but Mayhem is great if you don't mind the gore and the language, but you aren't like a super fan of horror, because it is very comedy with some like actiony, scary-ish parts. Then I took a bit of a break and did not watch anything until the 8th, where I watched both of the movies that we talked about recently on the podcast, Napoleon Dynamite, which went up last week, and then Big Fat Liar, which went up yesterday for you guys watching this, unless you are on Patreon, where it went up on Sunday, and then, so yesterday still for you, but whatever. And then I spent the next day watching Pieces of a Woman, a new Netflix film starring Vanessa Kirby and Shia LaBeouf. I really loved it. It is a very Oscar bait movie, but I am one of those film school bitches who loves that kind of stuff. I die for that kind of stuff. Vanessa Kirby did an excellent performance, and she will definitely get nominated. I will be upset if she doesn't. And then I spent the rest of that day binging The Queen's Gambit, which I also really, really loved, but I am a big fan of Anya Taylor-Joy. And then the next day, I spent all day watching movies for the 1001 checklist, which is this. It's a series I used to do on here before the pandemic hit, and it became very, very stressful for me to do. So now I do very chill, laid back episodes once a month over on Patreon, and I will give my producer tier patrons, the $20 tier patrons, a list of the 4 movies that I'm planning on watching that month, and they'll pick which one they want me to do a video about, and then all of the patrons, no matter what level you are on, you get to see my review of that. And this month they chose Clerks, that is actually up today right now for you on YouTube. For patrons, it's up tomorrow. And the movie that they picked was Clerks, and I also watched Bowling for Columbine, The Adventures of Robin Hood, and Raising Arizona. And then after that, I just did kind of another little binge. I will go on, I'll watch 3 or 4 movies a day sometimes, especially when I'm at work. When I'm at work, which is literally just sitting at my desk over there, and then I'll have the TV on here and I'll play 3 or 4 movies while I work. And I watched The Year of Spectacular Men, which is a Zoe Deutsch film starring her and her sister, Madeline Deutsch. And it is also written by Madeline, and it also stars their mom, Leah Thompson. So it was really, really interesting to see the 3 of them together. They are really great. They have great chemistry together. Nicholas Braun is also in it, which is one of the main reasons why I watched the movie. Ever since watching Succession in December, I have been obsessed with watching Nicholas Braun movies. You'll see that coming up in a little bit. And it's a great romantic comedy. It's also kind of just, a coming of age film a little bit, but it's more of the coming of age for your quarter life crisis type thing, which I really related to because I had that a couple years ago. Moved out to LA, and I'm not the biggest romantic comedy fan, but it's really great. And Save Yourselves, I watched that. It's about this couple who wants to kind of get rid of technology for a week, goes out to a cabin in the woods, and because their cell phones are off, they don't have any internet access, they miss an alien invasion, and they have to fight off the aliens. It was okay, but I felt it didn't really end for me. It just felt kind of blah. It was a movie, but it was interesting. It was funny. The 2 leads have a great chemistry together, but there's just some things that I'm just I don't know why that happened, but okay. And then to round out that night, I watched Whiskey Tango Foxtrot starring Tina Fey and Martin Freeman. Yes, Martin Freeman, and Margot Robbie's in it as well as Nicholas Braun. He is the main reason I picked this movie to watch. It was one that was on my list to watch when it first came out back in 2016, but I just never got to it and to see it in theaters. And then after that, I watched Spontaneous, which is a new film. It's another romantic comedy that I actually enjoyed, but it's more of a horror romantic comedy, and it really focuses and deals with depression and anxiety in a really, really good job. Does a good job of handling that. And it has, what's his name? Charlie Plummer from a lot of things. But I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. I know it's free on Epix if you have that. I have it for free because I bought Domino's just to get the Epix free subscription for a month. And after that, I watched Johnny Mnemonic. Keanu Reeves, that's all I'm going to say. Just, it's Keanu Reeves. And then I watched the Night Stalker series on Netflix. If you like true crime, you will like this. I highly recommend it if you enjoy true crime. And then Why Him with Bryan Cranston, Zoe Deutsch, and James Franco. I'm blanking on names for some reason. This is also a very funny comedy movie. It didn't really like, I was like, it's okay. It's not like it didn't hit my sense of humor, but the performances are really incredible. Megan Mullally is also in it. She's the mom. And then, there's a lot. On the 18th, I watched a lot of movies. I watched 6 movies. I watched Lockdown, the new HBO movie with Chiwetel Ejiofor. Yeah, and Anne Hathaway, and like a ton of cameos. I did not like this movie. I do not recommend it. It just, well, actually, you know what? I'm not going to do a full review of it, but I did a extensive review, and it wasn't just like a funny one-liner kind of review like I normally do on Letterboxd. It is an actual review, and yeah, I did not like this movie. It's one of those too soon kind of movies. And if you read my review on Letterboxd, you'll understand why. Then after that, I watched Time, which is a documentary about this woman whose husband has been in prison for like 18 years, and it's her journey trying to get him out, and it incorporates her home movies, like video diary she was making for him, and it's so touching, and you just cry like a baby at the end. After that, I watched One Night in Miami, which is Regina King's, I think, feature directorial debut. She did something for BET, but this is like her big thing, and it was really, really great. The performances from all of the actors are really great. It's about, I think, Martin Luther King Jr. No, Malcolm X. I don't know why I thought Martin Luther King Jr. Malcolm X, Sam Cooke, Jim Brown, and Cassius Clay, aka, Muhammad Ali. And it's kind of a fictitious story of them meeting one night after Cassius Clay's boxing match. And then after that, I watched Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which I love alien stuff, and this is just alien conspiracy theory thing, and it's bad. It's real bad, but it's funny to see the guy that produced it and kind of is the main guy talking throughout it. Not the narrator, but the main guy in it who has all of these secret documents and stuff. It's just, he's a nut job. He's crazy and just, oh. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second though as well. It's one of the last movies I have watched recently. And then after that, I watched both the original Valley Girl with Nick Cage and then the new Valley Girl with the girl from Happy Death Day, Jessica Roth, and I really like the original Valley Girl. It is a little bit of a romantic comedy, but I think I like it for the baby Nick Cage, where he almost goes full Nick Cage, but it's not quite, full Nick Cage anger, but he does do a little bit of shouting. And then the new Valley Girl from 2020 is kind of more of a musical, which I wasn't expecting, but it's kind of fun to have them singing 80s songs, kind of just bursting into 80s songs. It's not great though, Logan Paul's in it. Oh, I also watched The Final Girls that day as well. There was a lot of movies that I watched that day, and that is great if you like comedy horror without a lot of horror. There's still some horror parts. If you also like slasher movies, you would like this as well. I really enjoyed it. And then I had a little mini Bong Joon-ho marathon after watching I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which I need to rewatch because when I watched it the first time, I did not enjoy it at all. And then after I watched it, I listened to the Dead Meat podcast where they discussed it, and Chelsea had done a really, really great deep dive on there. If you have not watched I'm Thinking of Ending Things, watch it, then listen to the Dead Meat podcast, no matter what you feel, because if you enjoyed it, you will enjoy their episode, and if you did not enjoy it, it will kind of open your mind to rewatching the film and kind of getting a lot more subtext from it, because that, like, the subtext had just kind of blown over my head. I was also watching it at like 10 in the morning, hadn't had coffee or any I had zero energy, and I was just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this. But then after watching that, I watched 3 Bong Joon-ho films: The Host, Snowpiercer for the first time, Really loved both of them. I have not met a Bong Joon-ho movie I have not liked. And then I watched the black and white Parasite, which Parasite was one of my favorite films of 2019. I think this is the 4th time I've watched Parasite, but this is the first time I've watched the black and white version, and it is just chef's kiss. It's so great. It brings everything up a little bit more, and it makes it just like one of those films, and I think there's just something about black and white that I love a lot. Then after that, I just watched Taxi Driver for my Patreon bonus features. That video went up on Sunday. If you want to see my thoughts on Taxi Driver, it's not the first time I've watched that movie, but it was picked from my patrons to watch, to do a little bit more about why a film student loves this film, or why it's a great film to watch in film school, and what its importance is in film history. So I did a little bit of a video on that. Then after that, I watched Starship Troopers and Doom. And just for the shits and gigs, I really had no other reason to watch them other than that. And then I went on a little bit of a space binge the next day and watched The Mars Generation, which is a documentary, kind of a combination of the history of the space program as well as some kids at space camp that are learning how to, or that are really, really passionate about going to be the first people to go to Mars and to figure out how to take people to Mars. And it was really interesting and fun, and it was like a space documentary. And then Mission Control: The Unsung Heroes of Apollo, and that was really great because you got to see behind the scenes information from a bunch of men who worked mission control during all of the Apollo missions, and their feelings about things that happened at the Apollo, like during the Apollo missions, like the first rocket blowing up before launch and all of that stuff. It's very heartwarming for some of the stories, and it's really awe-inspiring that what these men went through. And then after that, I watched Unacknowledged, which is the prequel to Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, even though they're basically the same documentary, pretty much. It's by the same guy, just has a different narrator. And in Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, it is focused more on how this guy communicates with aliens, and like it's basically just he meditates and can communicate with aliens. I hate this guy. But after that, the last thing I watched was Avenues, which is another Nicholas Braun movie. He's in it along with Michael Argorano. I can't pronounce his last name, but they're both in Sky High. Michael Argorano plays the main character, the super-powered guy, and Nicholas Braun is his sidekick. And it's written and directed by Michael Argorano or whatever, and it's okay. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world. It's a movie, but that's pretty much all the movies that I watched in the month of January. Now I have a little post-it of TV that I've been watching, and I'll run through this really, really quickly. I have been watching on and off whenever I feel like it, Doctor Who. It'll be something that I put on and just watch through it. I did start rewatching the Matt Smith era because I realized while watching it that is my favorite era, is Matt Smith along with Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill. The three of them together I really love. I love their chemistry together. And it's not just because Karen Gillan plays a character named Amy. I really, really love the dynamic between the 11th Doctor, Amy, and Rory. I think they work very well together. And that's also kind of the season that I started watching, or really, really started watching in line with when it aired, because when I started watching Doctor Who, catching up, it was during the last season of David Tennant, so I didn't really get to watch any of his stuff live. It was more of catching up. And then after that, not after that, but I binged the first two seasons, the first two seasons, the only seasons of Barry that are out right now. I watched a year ago the first 2 episodes and then just never got back to it. And then I just watched all 2 seasons in 2 days, I think. And I've started watching Seinfeld from the very beginning. I've seen random episodes here and there when it was in syndication. After school, I would come on either before or after Friends. So I would probably catch the last 5 to 10 minutes of an episode while waiting for Friends to start, or watch the beginning of it just because it was on. So I finally just, watching everything in order. I probably will be finished with it by this time in March, because I'm like halfway through the entire series already. And I also started watching Schitt's Creek from the beginning as well. I only watched the first 2 episodes for a Patreon bonus video, but that was like 2 years ago and I never came back to it. But some people had been like sending me Schitt's Creek memes and I had no idea what they were talking about. And people quote Moira Rose all the time, and I love Catherine O'Hara anyway, so I was like, you know what, why not, just take the plunge and watch it. So I did, and I've really been enjoying it. I think I'm halfway through season 2 right now. And then what else have I been watching on TV? Pushing Daisies was added to HBO Max recently. My friends have been recommending that to me for a while. I basically binged all of season 1 on Saturday, and I watched the first episode and a half today, the day of recording this, which is the 31st of January. So I really actually enjoyed it. It took me a while to really get into it because the narration for some reason was just like super overwhelming and kind of made me anxious for some reason, but I got used to it after a while and I really, really love it. I think Lee Pace does a really great job of just the way he holds himself is just, it's so great. It's very subtle and it's really great. If you have HBO Max and you have not watched Pushing Daisies, I highly recommend checking that out. And every month, of course, I will be watching X-Men the Animated Series until I am pretty much done with it. I do 2 episodes every single week for a Patreon podcast where I'm going through and watching that series. If you want to follow along, you can check out the link in the description down below for Patreon. The first episode of the series is available for anybody to listen to if you are interested in becoming a patron. Basically, I made a couple different posts on different tiers available to the public, so if you want to check out what it's like to be a specific patron, you can check out those tiers in the description down below. I think I made a post about it, maybe not, but it is definitely in the description of my Patreon. You can go there and check out different posts to see what those tiers are like, including the pilot season tier, which is where I do a usually 10 to 15 minute episode every week talking about 2 X-Men the Animated Series episodes. And I think that will be going until like the end of May. So if you want to get on board, you've got 20 episodes to listen to right now, and then however many more it is until the end of the animated series, and then patrons get to vote on what I will be doing for season 2 of pilot season. But that is pretty much everything I watched in the month of January. I think I should have been doing this all along because I watched so much stuff last year. I watched so many movies. I think I got up to almost 500 movies that I watched, and I watched a lot of TV. I think I spent the first 3 months of quarantine watching, I watched all of Friends for the 30th time. I watched all of I Love Lucy for the 30th time probably as well. Same with Boy Meets World, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. So it's I watch a lot of stuff. The other day I think, and this is something that I don't log in Letterboxd if you are curious, I don't log Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings because I watch at least one movie from either of those series every week. And on Friday I watched The Two Towers, and Friday as in the 29th, the 29th of January, what month are we in? Is it 2021? I watched The Two Towers Extended Edition because that's the only way to watch them now, and I watched most of Prisoner of Azkaban because I fell asleep at 11:30 because I'm an old lady. But anyways, let me know what you guys watched this month. If you have any recommendations based on what I watched this month, definitely give me recommendations for space exploration and space movies because that's something I've been really into lately, and any true crime as well because during the day, if I don't want to watch a movie, I will be listening to true crime podcasts usually. So yeah, give me some recommendations based on that. I have watched a lot of both of those kinds of things that are on Netflix and Hulu. If you do give me any recommendations, please be sure it's on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, or HBO Max, because I don't really want to go pay for movies, especially right now. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much, and I really truly do appreciate you. Whoever you are, let me know here in the comments down below, and let's be friends. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and subscribe if you're new, because I love talking on these movies, TV shows, filmmaking, history, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye.